this morning. We'll be underway in just a few moments. We're working out a couple of details behind the scenes. Thank you for joining us. We'll be right with you. Terri Duguay of Maigus, and there's a lot of magic apparently in what Terri has to offer. She brings 2 decades of organizational development experience with her as a keynote speaker and consultant. She has a master's degree from York University and a whole host of certifications. And Terri is on the board of the Toronto Organizational Design Network as well. So I won't spend a lot of time introducing Terri. You'll meet Terri for yourself. Thank you for joining us again, and thank you, Terri.
Thanks very much, George. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. As George, I'm Terri Duguay. I also have with me Charmaine Holtz today, and Charmaine is going to help me. She is just about next week is starting her resilience practitioner certification. I thought this would be a great opportunity for her to see the program in action, as well as multitasking on this platform is still a bit of a challenge for me. So Charmaine's going to help me with monitoring the chat and just bringing to my attention anything, people raising their hands or whatever. So that's how we'll manage this, but certainly we have enough people on the webinar that if you do want to chime in, and I do want you to chime in, and this is going to be interactive, so I will be expecting that. Perhaps we can use the raise hand just to try and keep it so we're not talking over everybody, each other, okay? So let's we'll take that approach. So please feel free to jump in, use the chat, raise your hand, whatever, and we'll get you interactive that way. So today we are looking at resilience, strengthening our personal resilience. This is a 1-hour version of what you can just well imagine is a much larger program. It is a program that I've been working with for many, many years. It actually is licensed with one of our large banks. We run it in 19 countries in 3 different languages and a host of other places. It's been around for the last 30 years or so. It has some very good legs behind it. And today I'm going to boil it down to just a couple of the salient points to give you something. My objective is to give you something that you can walk away with that you can use to strengthen your resilience in what is proving to be a fairly interesting time, shall we just call it that. So what we're going to look at is we're going to look at our 7 resilience muscles. Okay, so these resilience muscles, without going into a whole lot of detail, have been proven through different focus groups and interviews and literature and everything, but they are the 7 muscles that highly resilient people are deemed to possess, and we all have them. That's the good news. Okay. On the other side of things, what is we tend to have some that are stronger in others and not so strong. What we want to look at today, keeping this very pandemic specific, because I think we have a great resilient opportunity in front of us. We're going to look at the muscles that maybe we need to be exercising the most in order to get through this pandemic. So that's what we're going to accomplish in the 1 hour. Again, I'm going to get you to chime in. I'm going to get you to be thinking about these resilient muscles. And so to that end, hopefully everyone has a pen and paper handy, because I'm going to get you to do a little bit of a self-assessment as we go along, okay? But first, I'm going to start by sharing my screen. Bear with me while I get that started. Alrighty. So you'll notice that it's mindful resilience. We are actually going to talk about the importance of mindfulness when it comes to resilience, but we're also going to look at some other different ways that we can strengthen our personal resilience. So what is resilience? I usually get some input on this, but since we have a larger group, I think I'm just going to go right into the definition. So it is the ability to deal with high levels of challenge and disruption while maintaining high levels of effectiveness and well-being. Okay, so 2 very important things for us to feel good about ourselves and to have that sense of self-worth, so to feel effective and well-being. Resilience does not make all the disruptions go away. I think my passion around this topic is recognizing that there are always going to be things that we need to deal with. Sometimes we're dealing with a lot, sometimes we're dealing with a little. And instead of feeling overwhelmed and getting out of sorts and losing our equilibrium. Resilience is what enables us to manage through all of the things that are coming at us. Now, I don't think anyone had anticipated the pandemic, but again, it is proving to be great fodder for understanding what our resilience is. So we all know people in our world that are resilient. The people who just seem to, it's water off a duck's back no matter what's going on. They seem to be able to juggle everything. They seem to be able to just to manage it all with a smile on their face. So what is it? Do they have something that we don't have? No, they don't. They have exercised their resilience. They've strengthened their resilience. I'm going to continue with the muscle analogy because I think it's really easy for our purposes today. So they exercise those muscles and they keep them strong and they have easy access to them. So that's what we're going to be looking at for us today, is how we can exercise and what we need to do. Not surprising, it's a little bit like anything. We have to work hard at it, we have to do it often, and we have to create new habits. And resilience is very much along the same lines. We need to create new habits around strengthening those muscles. And we do. We then have the ability to cope effectively with stress and uncertainty, to bounce back from physical and psychological stress, to absorb more. And I think that's one of the key pieces here. If you think of your resilience like a sponge, why is it that some people can absorb more than others? Okay, so how can we get a bigger sponge in all of this? And added another analogy in there, in addition to the muscles. So we can adjust to our disruption, we can maintain our high levels of productivity is what allows us to do with if we have our strong resilience. The problem is, though, what happens is when disruption, chaos, change, and I use all of those words interchangeably, it means all the same thing. What happens is that we get triggered and we end up going into the limbic system part of our brain, which is that fight and flight response. You've probably all heard a little bit about that. It's getting a lot of talk these days. And that part of our brain was designed to keep us safe. Okay, so it was the second part of our brain to evolve, and it was purely around keeping us safe. And we need it. It happens at the subconscious level. We get triggered without our say-so. All of a sudden, we find that we are triggered. We're in that part of our brain without having any understanding sometimes of how we've even gotten there. It is because that part of our brain responds in 0.85 milliseconds, and it responds 100 times faster than our thinking brain. So with resilience, what we want to do is we cannot stop that trigger from happening. That's what keeps us safe, and that's all good. But what we want to do is we want to be able to bounce back faster, to get back into that thinking, rational, decision-making part of our brain. And that is our prefrontal cortex. Okay, so when we get triggered, when we get disrupted, when chaos happens, we go into the limbic part of our brain where our amygdala is, the fight and flight response. Again, that's there for a very, very important reason. But we want to get out of it, get back into the prefrontal cortex, which is where our relationship skills are. It's where our parenting skills come from. Again, rational, decision-making, logical. Okay? Also, that part of our brain has a direct connection into our heart, and I'm not going to go into all of that in the time that we have today. It takes us down a different path, but there is also a nerve that connects that part of our brain directly into our heart, so that is why where compassion comes from as well. So all a very important part. When we are in the limbic part of our brain, and this is the important part as to why we actually do want to get out of there as quickly as possible. And first of all, I should put the caveat in. I'm talking in very black and white terms, and there are 100 shades of gray in here, okay? But when we get triggered, think of your brain like a teeter-totter. So as we get triggered, the limbic part of our brain turns up, and the prefrontal cortex part of our brain turns down. Again, 100 shades of gray in there, okay? So we lose that ability to be rational, logical, and all that good stuff. And I'm sure if we all took a moment, we could think of those times where we lose our ability to make the simplest of decisions. I think one of the easiest ways of looking at it is how many times you've been in the heat of an argument, and then 20 minutes later you think, why didn't I say that, right? That's exactly what I'm talking about. Why you didn't say that and why you couldn't think of that at the time is because the limbic part of your brain was turned up and that thinking rational part of your brain was turned down. So again, think of it as a teeter-totter. So we can't have both happening at the same time. We want to calm down the limbic and get back into the prefrontal cortex. Okay, and that's what resilience does. Resilience, all of these muscles we're going to talk about reside in the prefrontal cortex part of our brain. And if we exercise them, it means we have a much easier way of getting back into that important part of our brain. And it is because we're creating the neural pathways that we need. And I'm going to show you a video later that is going to do a much better job of explaining that than what I can do right now. So let's take a look at these muscles. All right, so here are the 7 muscles, again, deemed to be what highly resilient people possess. We're going to step through each one of them. And what I'm going to get you to do, this is where the pen and paper come in handy. What I'm going to get you to do is I want you to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 as we go through, okay? And 1 would be where you don't have a lot of access to these muscles. This is something you really have to think about in order to dial it up or to exercise it, whichever term you want to use. 10 would be this is something that it's your go-to, it's your default when things get crazy, when disruption happens, chaos happens, you just immediately dial up that muscle without even thinking too hard about it. And 5 would be something that's a little bit more situational. Okay, so that's how you're going to rate yourself. This will give you some insight in terms of when things get a little crazy. COVID would be a good example. What is it that you rely on, and what might be helpful if you could have access to it? And that's where what the muscle would be that you'd be looking at exercising to try and strengthen it. Okay. The other thing about these, ideally, and again in the bigger session, first of all, you would have completed a profile, which sort of takes a little bit of the subjectivity out of it, I guess. And you would have a good picture of which of these muscles you access and which you don't. The other thing about these is they do act as a system. Okay, so we do want to have equal strength in all of them. That's ideally what we're shooting for. So we want to, it doesn't really matter how strong or how not so strong, but if we can have an equal access to them, that way, no matter what the situation is, we can grab that muscle and run with it. Because they act as a system, they can also work against each other if some are much stronger than the others. And again, for our purposes today, I won't go into much more detail than that. Okay, so let's get going on this. Again, rate yourself as we go along to give yourself a little bit of an understanding of where your resilient strengths and gaps are. Now, we're looking at these muscles when things are chaotic, when there is disruption. So I get a lot of people who will come up to me with their profiles in a session, and they'll say, I'm really positive. Everyone tells me I'm very positive. To which I always respond, but are you still positive when you're overwhelmed, when your equilibrium has been upset? So think about it in terms of when you have been triggered, when you are in the midst of disruption, not when things are going well, or tickety-boo, as I like to say. I'm also going to ask, as we go through these, this is the interactive part, I am going to get people to chime in, and I want you to be thinking about if you feel strong, if you feel that have strength in any one of these characteristics as we go through them, I'd love to hear how these characteristics, how these muscles are showing up for you during this pandemic time. Okay, so that's when I'd like you to put up your hand and unmute yourself and chime in, because we all have something to learn from each other. I've got some information, but all of you have great stuff out there, and I think everyone can benefit from hearing how people are using these muscles as we deal with COVID. Okay, so let's get into our muscles. The first one being positivity. Identify opportunities and hope in challenging situations. And here we can see that if you are high in positivity, you keep going in the face of setbacks, you inspire and energize those around you, and you seize and create opportunities. The other thing I want to add to this, and I have a couple of examples that I would share, is that you are able to see both sides of the picture. So even in the midst of adversity, there is still always something that we can hang on to. I'll give you a couple of examples. Actually, I'll give you two. So I always make it up as I go along, bear with me. So the first example is from someone, I guess a couple years ago now. She had just come back from maternity leave. And we got to this particular slide, and she said, yes, I know exactly what you're saying when you can see opportunity, or where you can see the positive, even in the midst of disruption or chaos. She shared with us that on her way into work the week before. She had just dropped the kids off at the daycare, was on the way into the office, and was in a car accident. It was a bad car accident in terms of the damage done, but not in terms of everyone being injured. So that was the good thing. The first thing that came to her mind was, thank goodness the kids were not in the car. That was, and what that did is it almost had a calming effect on her. She was able to stay in that prefrontal cortex of her brain, be able to be rational, make decisions, and keep her equilibrium going, despite the fact that she now had to deal with the insurance and replacing the car and all the headaches that go with that. She was able to say, thank goodness the kids were not in the car, and that kept her in the right part of her brain. Okay. The other example is a little bit more tragic, to say the least. So this was a couple of months ago on the mainland. I was working with a couple of groups over there, and I noticed that one of the gentlemen was not feeling 100%. He was, I could tell he was a little off throughout the session. Anyway, as it turns out, he shared with me he had just come back from 2 weeks being in Toronto, visiting a friend who had just lost his wife and child in the Ukrainian air incident. Yes. Anyway, at the end of the day, I always ask, what did people get out of this? What were the aha moments? And when he stood up and he said, as a result of that, I never let my little girl go off to school without telling her that I love her and giving her a hug. As a result of that incident, he had connected with a whole bunch of people he'd lost touch with. They had all gone to the university together. And they now had this great support network that they were able to come together and share. And he was able to see that even in the midst of this tragedy, there was something that came out of it. There was some glimmer that came out of it, whether it be the relationship with his daughter and then or that new connection with his friend. And so it was a wonderful example of positivity in what you can never expect to see positivity in complete trauma. So take a second, rate yourself. Where do you see yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 in positivity? So when chaos, disruption strikes, are you still able to see that there is a glimmer of hope, that there is some light there? Or do you tend to become discouraged? Are you focusing so much on the problems and the difficulties that you can't see the other side of things? And do you feel yourself almost withdrawing from what's going on? And then I would love to hear from someone who either feels they themselves are strong in positivity or knows someone who's strong in positivity and how that is showing up in our COVID world. So I'll pause for a second and give someone an opportunity to chime in. So if you could just either, if you can't find the raise hand, which is at the bottom of your screen, you'll see the toolbar at the bottom of the screen, and it's either under chat or it might be under reactions. You can raise your hand, or feel free to just unmute and hopefully we won't end up talking over each other. If we do, we'll work through that. Anyone want to chime in? Okay, looks like you've everyone has been unmuted. So someone want to chime in? Okay, I'm going to move us along. Okay. I think I'm unmuted. There we go. Okay. Now I love this platform, but we're all getting used to it. It does have its own challenges. Anyway, so confidence is our next muscle. Okay, this is believing you can use your capabilities to successfully deal with challenges. I like to think of this one as the first of all, let me just back up a little bit. So where positivity is our outward view, confidence is our inward view. And so I find what I often hear people who have confidence, and again, remember this is during difficult situations, we'll often hear them say, I don't know, I don't have all the answers, but we'll figure it out. We'll work it out as we go along. So in that, you can hear a couple of things. First of all is the comfort with being right, not having to be 100%, being prepared to give it a try and maybe fall down and scrape your knees and have to get up and try it over again. And that there's also that belief that you have what you need in order to, and if you don't, then you know where to get whatever it is that you need. Okay, so someone who's high in confidence, know your strengths and your weaknesses, you assert yourself calmly, powerfully, you see setbacks as opportunities for learning, and that's probably one of the most key points there. So you don't see it as something that is going to undo you, but you see it as something that is a potential learning opportunity. Versus on the other side of things, I'm going to summarize all of that. What that can look like is victimization. So it's being done to you. You have no say in it. You have no control over it. There's nothing you can do. So being very much the victim. So again, that would be the extreme low versus a high. So take a moment, rate yourself on that score of 1 to 10. So do you feel that you're able to step up and manage whatever it is that you need to manage, or bring in whomever you need, whatever skills, whatever it is that you need? Or do you feel that it's being done to you? And there's a great example with COVID. It's being done to us, but do we still feel like we have got some control, some way that we can affect what's going on? And love to hear from somebody. I'll give it just a second. One eye on the clock.
I'd say it's Gord, right? I'd say there's a bit of a challenge in my situation at times, in that I can always tend to look at the bright side, and for many that can be distracting. So my comments are not as valued because I'm tending to the positive side as opposed to the negative side all the time. And I'm not sure if I need to temper that, or but it can be, I'm sure, annoying to many, because I'm always looking at the bright side.
Yeah, that's a great point, Greg. Thank you for making that. You'll see as we go along in these muscles, there is a tempering of that. But you're right. But positivity it's not about being what I call Pollyanna. It's not about not seeing the risk. It's not about not seeing the threat. It's seeing all of it and being able to have a balanced view, right? So, so as we go through the muscles, again, you'll see where these muscles will temper that propensity to perhaps be too positive, and allow you to look at the risk as well. So we'll go through that, but that's a great point. Thank you for making that. Okay, all right, let's move on. Priorities is our next muscle. And so priorities is identifying and paying attention to the most important things. Usually when I'm talking about priorities and talking about this to a group of people in an organization, I talk about it on a couple of different levels, and usually it is around about, okay, can we stay focused on what needs to be done? Can we stay focused on task at hand versus, or if we step it up a notch, can we stay focused on what our bigger role is? So if we are, responsible for sales or whatever, can we continue to stay focused on that even in the midst of all the disruption? But there is another level, and it is that level that I think is the most important in what we are dealing with today. And that is where we get our sense of self-worth, where we, that's that second point on high, be clear about your own values and goals. So this is about the value we feel that we bring, and what it is, our purpose. Okay, so we're up there talking about our purpose, why we are here. And the reason why I say it's important to look at that level in the pandemic is that the pandemic does feel like so much of it is out of our control. So I often get a lot of pushback from people saying, I can't say what's priority to me. I can't control my day-to-day work because there's so much going on, right? And that might very well be true depending on the level of chaos. And again, the pandemic would be a really good example of that for all of you being business owners. But nothing can ever take away your purpose. Nothing can ever take away what gives you your sense of self-worth. I'll share another story. Working with another group a couple of years ago, a year ago, doesn't matter. They were going through huge organizational change, because this is one of our large investment companies. They were going through a huge organizational change. I was working with the technology team and had about 30 people in the room at the time. One of the guys at the back puts his hand up. He says, I know exactly what you're talking about. He said, the reason I get out of bed every day, the reason that I stay motivated and feel challenged is that I deliver good customer service. That's what I do. That's my purpose, and that is what gets me out of bed. He said, all of this is just noise. meaning the organizational change that they were going through. All of this is just noise. It too will go away. It doesn't stop me from getting up and delivering good customer service. And I thought it was a great example of priorities. A personal example would be, I'm sitting here at the beginning of the pandemic, and usually I'm in classrooms and working with people in person, and resilience is very important to me. It is something that I feel that I can give out to people. And I sat there and I thought, well, what do I do now? And this is when I came up with delivering these 1-hour webinars, and I've been doing that to my clients as refreshers, or the clients that don't use the resilience program, and giving it to them as something that I can still do what I feel is important and still feel that I'm giving back. And so that was how I had to focus on my priority, as opposed to scrambling to try and figure out what to do in this particular time. So rate yourself. And again, if anyone wants to chime in, I'd love to hear how you're exercising your priority.
So I have a question.
Yep.
In relation to this, because personally for me, this would probably be one of the most challenging areas when there are multiple disruptions or challenges that you're faced with in the whether it's your business environment or in your personal, and how those interrelate on a daily basis. So what are your tips or suggestions in order to quiet the mind and maybe be able to focus on how you sort of organize your priorities in a way that does not take you from zero to burnout sort of so quickly?
I think always the best approach for that is not eating the elephant all at once in small bites. And we're going to talk about, actually, when we get through the muscles, we're going to talk about how we can strengthen some of them, which is exactly your question. And as with anything, I think we have learned over just very recently, actually, it hasn't been that long, that the way our brain works and the way that we do best is if we take small incremental steps towards anything. So if we trying to eat the elephant all at one time, or boil the ocean, and these are all old sayings, doesn't work. And so with anything, you have to think about those small incremental changes, whether it's a behavioral or a mindset shift, that's going to get you closer to your goal. Okay? So that's answering very generically a very specific question. But if you think about how you can, if you're feeling like you're just trying to do too much, how can you bring it down to the day? How can you bring it down to the hour? How can you bring it down to the morning, and just and work on it in baby steps? Okay, we are going to talk more about that as we get through. Thank you for your question. Creativity, our next muscle. Generate a range of possibilities and options. Okay, so this is not feeling very black and white, or looking for the right or best answer, or this is the way we've always done it, this is the only way we can do it. So being comfortable generating a whole lot of new ideas, and perhaps even embracing some pretty crazy ones. I am sure that everybody has had to exercise this muscle, because we've all had to look at different ways of doing things. And I was sharing with George as we were getting set up, I certainly had to look at different ways of doing what I do. And this is a great example. Again, a medium that's not, I've shied away from and I've had to embrace, and a couple of other different ways that I've had to get creative in order to continue with my business. I think there's probably, I know in talking to a lot of people around this lately, there's also a lot of us who have to be creative as we are now trying to perhaps run our business at home. We have the kids at home, maybe we have a full house, we've got all the animals and everything else like that. And how can we still keep thinking about different, or are we thinking about different ways of trying to accomplish all of that? Having every meal in has been a challenge for me. So if I look on the household side of things, I'm certainly digging out some recipes and experimenting with that. Are we trying to also getting creative with how we can make budgets go longer and all that kind of good stuff? So think about yourself, scale of 1 to 10. And again, love to hear from anyone if they have come up with some really creative ways of dealing with COVID, whether it's on the personal or professional side of things. It'd be great to hear. Okay, we'll move on. Okay, so this is our next one, which is connection, building relationships with others and drawing on them for support. So this is really about Do we hunker down? Do we lock the door, close the blinds, and disappear into ourselves and really live in our own head and just stay very closed? Or do we reach out? Do we connect? Do we also demonstrate a little bit of vulnerability? This is where our vulnerability sits as well. Are we comfortable saying, I need help? I'm putting up my hand. I'm struggling here. I'm drowning. I don't know which way to go. Can someone help me? So that's what our connection is. And again, I've heard so many great stories with the pandemic of people, again, who are using this platform, Zoom. Actually, I was playing euchre on Zoom on Saturday with friends in Toronto. It was great fun. So maybe that's some creativity coming out as well, which actually is a good point. Creativity and connection are where we generate our new ideas for dealing with whatever it is that's in front of us. So they are linked in that respect. Do we generate them inside? Or do we use our own creativity by doing some brainstorming and coming up and saying stuff? Or do we look to other people? And so that's how the two of them help us in coming up with different ways of approaching whatever's in front of us. So does anyone here, again, rate yourself, please. Anyone here consider themselves strong in connection, and have you done something that's how have you used it with the pandemic?
It's Gord. I'll share that I just randomly the last 3 days I've gone into my Facebook list of friends, and I have some number of them, and I asked Siri to generate a random number between 1 and that number. She provided that number. I scrolled down to that numbered person on my list and sent them an encouraging message on Facebook, just saying, hey, this is really weird, but weird times, and et cetera, et cetera. Just wishing them well, updating them on me, encouraging them along. Today was day 3. So day 1, I didn't hear back from the person. Day 2, I did, and we had a nice little conversation back and forth. And I've just sent out day 3. So it's hopefully it's encouraging for others. And in some cases, of course, I'm connected with them in some way, and so finding those threads to reconnect has been really good. And that's actually been a really good thing, I think, out of the having less activities to do is being proactive and reaching out. So just I'd encourage others to do that.
Yes, that's a great point. Actually, I think my social calendar's never been so good. So no, it's great. It's what we do need to do because we always feel better when we know we're not in this alone, right? So yeah, great example of connection, and very creative too. I think you dialed up both there, Gord. That's great. Okay, so now structure, creating and applying effective systems, processes, and plans. Think of this as being organized, okay? And again, organized in the midst of chaos, okay? In the midst of disruption, do all of those systems that you have in place that keep you organized, that keep you sane, that allow you to get your hands on whatever information you're looking for, are you still able to keep those going even when everything is falling apart at the seams, even when there's disruption, chaos, change going on? So I'll share an example, a very simple example, but a system that I would have is my inbox. Okay, on the left-hand side, all the files, all my clients, all the different projects that are going on, and when things are going well, emails go from my inbox into the respective files, so then I know where I'm supposed to be, what I'm supposed to be doing, and who I'm talking to, and all that kind of good stuff. When I get overwhelmed, and I'll true confessions here, this is probably my Achilles heel. When I get overwhelmed, that system goes away. All of a sudden, my inbox is overflowing. I can't find the email that tells me what I'm supposed to do and where I'm going. Okay, so that's a system of mine that works really well when I'm doing well, but falls apart for me when things aren't going well. Again, I know in talking to a lot of people that structure is something that people are struggling with, especially as a lot of people who would typically will go out to the office now working at home, and the kids are home and everybody's home. And are you still able to keep the household ticking along the way that we normally would? Are you still able to keep the kids organized in whatever fashion that they need to be organized in? So take a minute, think about what you would rate yourself on that. And if anyone's come up with any interesting systems or has a good example of a system that they are able to maintain, we'd love to hear it. I think this is a lot of people's Achilles heel. My experience in working with this program for as long as I have, this one's always a little bit lower across the board. Okay, we'll move on to last but not least, and that is experimenting. So this is trying new and different approaches. It differs from creativity. We want to confuse those two, and yes, there are definitely some similarities. They both speak to our comfort with being looking at things out of the box. Absolutely. The difference is creativity is more around thinking, brainstorming, generating new ideas. Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to put them into play, and that's what experimenting is. So think, to simplify experimenting, think of it as your risk tolerance. Okay, how strong is that risk tolerance of yours? Are you prepared, in not without having all the information, to try something new? Are you prepared to take your big toe and put it in the water, just even when you have no idea what the outcome is going to be? So it really is, it's about your risk tolerance. So with low in this, it's you want things just to be where they are. You don't have tolerance for new, you don't have a tolerance for the ambiguity. High, ambiguity is fine. You'll work through it, you'll give it a try. And again, there's a embedded in this is also failure is an option. It's okay to try and fail. That's fine. That's not going to make a big difference. Okay, so rate yourself, and if anyone has any experimenting samples, I would love to hear them. Otherwise, we're going to move on to looking at which one or two of these would be the most helpful. Okay. Normally, I would have a poll where we'd be able to interact with it, but we found out late that unless I'm the host, I can't do that. So we're going to do it the old-fashioned way, and it won't be as scientific, I guess. But I think we'll still get somewhere with it. So I'm going to ask Charmaine to help me here. Charmaine, hopefully you are one of the co-hosts so you can see some of the responses, because I won't be able to see all of them. And what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to think about, you know what, I'm going to go back up through all so you can see all of them. And if you had to pick one or two of these muscles, which do you think would make the most sense to be exercising during the pandemic? Which do you think would be the best muscles for you to be applying or exercising during this time? So you can use the chat. You can certainly come off mute and give us your ideas that way as well, whichever works.
Yeah,
and Charmaine.
Yeah, thanks, Terri. So I see some notes coming in, and so
Okay.
you can either send them to me privately, or you can just click on the button that may say to everyone if you want, so everyone can see everyone's. But we're seeing creativity and experimenting, structure, one person said. One person said in their particular role, they're using connection.
We're seeing more of one muscle over the others, or is it pretty much widespread at this point?
Get another minute there maybe and see if anyone else wants to share. Another one on connection.
Okay.
Another person said creativity and experimentation.
Okay. All right. So we'll just
connection and positivity is the last one.
Connection and positivity. That's the last. Okay. So we didn't see a lot of positivity overall then.
Yeah, there's just a couple there on positivity. The last comment is going to experiment with video email. Video email, that's interesting. I haven't heard that one before. Video email. Oh, like sending a video maybe over email. I'm learning too. A call out to a cold client with a video email to see how it goes.
Okay.
Great. So trying something.
Oops. Hopefully I didn't do that. Did I just cut you off, Shannon?
No.
Okay, good. Okay. So it sounds like, and again, I wish we had the poll because it gives us a little bit more of a scientific response, but that's okay. We're used to improvising when we need to, especially with this medium. So looks like it's a little bit of everything, and I think that we could make the argument for all of it. So I think what I'll do is I'll go with the many that I've done over the last couple of weeks. What I often see is positivity and creativity positivity and priorities, I think, are often the ones that come out the most. The positivity, I am going to focus on that because positivity is really important no matter what it is that we're dealing with. And again, the bigger program, we talk a little bit about energy, and our energy comes from positivity. So if we don't have the energy to bring to the problem, whatever the problem may be, in this case, it's COVID and the impact it's having on our lives. If we don't have the energy to bring to it, it's really hard to move forward into coming up with solutions. Okay. Also, positivity, and thinking about the brain, okay, as well. If we are positive, we are more likely in that prefrontal cortex and have greater access to all of our resources, as opposed to if we are spending too much time in the limbic system, again, those resources are much more limited. Okay, so very simply, and that was a boiled down version of what I would normally talk about. Positivity is important. And so if we did want to exercise that muscle, okay, and there again, we're going to use that analogy. If we were going to go to the positivity gym, what would we do in order to strengthen that muscle? And I'm going to go back to the conversation that I had earlier with someone on the webinar. What is something that's small, incremental, that we can do daily? So if you were going to go to the gym and you were going to work on this flabby tricep, you would go in and you would do repetitions of a back curl or whatever it would be. Or if you're working on your bicep, you're going to do front curl. Those are small, incremental movements that over time will result in those muscles growing. Think of the same thing when you think about your resilience muscle. So if you wanted to strengthen that positivity muscle, what could you do on a daily basis to do so? And I'd love to hear from someone. I'd love to hear from someone who is strong in positivity. I'd love to hear from someone who knows someone who's strong in positivity. What can I do to strengthen that muscle? And please feel free to use chat or to come off mute.
I would think if you, sorry, it's Gordon Wright from Hemlock Printers again. If you do the sandwich effect, so if you're 10 to the negative, try a negative, positive, negative, when you're sharing ideas, or if you 10 to the positive, go positive, negative, positive. But finding a way to mix in one of the opposite of what you're going to tend to will get your brain being a little more creative on both sides.
Absolutely, it's a great example. There's an exercise or a tool I often use, which is a polarity map. But you can use this yourself quite easily. If you're finding yourself really focusing on all the negative and all the bad, force yourself to come up with some good. Force yourself to see some light at the end of that tunnel. Honestly, if someone can console their friend over such a tragedy as the air incident and still be able to see that light, we can all do it. We can all find something that we can hang on to. So yes, that's one thing to do at the end of each day. So combine this with part of your routine already, is to think about the three great things that happen, or maybe not great, maybe let's go with good. Three good things that happened today. So again, if we find ourselves ruminating, focusing on the past, worrying about the future, can we just bring it back to today and focus on what happened today? Because really, that's the only thing that we can control. Because the past is gone, and the future is anybody's.
We've got some things coming in the chat here.
Sure.
Question there. So one person said meditating to clear the mind is one technique that they're using. Another technique is daily gratitude journaling to grow your positivity muscle.
Yeah.
And another person said, reiterate to yourself what you've done well and continue to do well. Relive the positive while learning from the negative experiences. So I guess that reframing element.
Excellent. Excellent. That's great. We are going to talk about gratitude. It is, and I'll sort of preempt it a little bit with this. If you want the superhighway into resilience, gratitude is a great way of doing it. So with all of this, all of everything you said, all of those are great. Thank you for all of that input. What it does is it creates new habits. And when we create new habits, we strengthen the neural pathways in our brain, which then we just do it naturally. We no longer have to try. We no longer have to force ourselves every day to come up with those 3 good things. We just naturally do it. So I'm going to show you now a video, again, that does a much better job of telling you about it than me. So this is 2 minutes, so not long, but it's got some really good information in it. And I've just lost the start. And as long as you're not on a phone, you should be able to hear it. But if you're using your audio on your phone, you won't be able to hear it, and I apologize for that. But if everyone's on their computer audio, it should be fine. So I'll let it go, and then we'll talk about what you hear.
Not so long ago, many scientists believed that the brain did not change after childhood, that it was hardwired and fixed by the time we became adults. But recent advances in only the last decade now tell us that this is simply not true. The brain can and does change throughout our lives. It is adaptable, like plastic. Hence, neuroscientists call this neuroplasticity. How does neuroplasticity work? If you think of your brain as a dynamic, connected power grid, there are billions of pathways or roads lighting up every time you think, feel, or do something. Some of these roads are well-travelled. These are our habits, our established ways of thinking, feeling, and doing. Every time we think in a certain way, practice a particular task, or feel a specific emotion, we strengthen this road. It becomes easier for our brains to travel this pathway. Say we think about something differently, learn a new task, or choose a different emotion. We start carving out a new road. If we keep travelling that road, our brains begin to use this pathway more, and this new way of thinking, feeling, or doing becomes second nature. The old pathway gets used less and less and weakens. This process of rewiring your brain by forming new connections and weakening old ones is neuroplasticity in action. The good news is that we all have the ability to learn and change by rewiring our brains. If you have ever changed a bad habit or thought about something differently, you have carved a new pathway in your brain and experienced neuroplasticity firsthand. With repeated and directed attention towards your desired change, you can rewire your brain.
So hopefully that was a good little video for helping you understand what we're talking about when we talk about strengthening our resilience. We really are impacting the brain. I think that I just want to draw attention to a couple of things in that video that always stand out for me, and it is that seeing, doing, thinking. That is carving the paths in our brain. So we have to, where we focus our attention is what we create, literally. And so we need to be careful that we are making sure that we are focusing our attention on what we want to be focusing our attention on. So mindfulness, as I mentioned off the top, is a huge part of resilience. And it's a huge part of resilience because it does exactly what the video just talked about. It strengthens that neural pathway. And it does it by virtue of the fact that we are in the moment. So mindfulness is something that is a term that's being bandied around for a lot of things these days. But for our purposes, mindfulness is being present in the moment without judgment. Okay? And it's literally, it is doing nothing but whatever is on task. Whether it is walking, simply walk. Don't be absorbed in your head. You can breathe and just breathe, but it is being in the moment. Not thinking about the past, not worrying about the future. It's not planning dinner. It is being right in the moment with whatever it is that you are doing. Studies, typically what people will do is they'll do an 8-week mindfulness program. Mindfulness is available in most hospitals, schools these days. So the benefits of it for children is huge and starting to be appreciated. Typically you would take an 8-week mindfulness course. Earlier studies, the brain was scanned at the beginning, middle, and end. And what it shows is that the amygdala, that trigger in our limbic system, actually reduces and the impact is lessened. Okay, so it still has to be there. We have to have, that's what keeps us alive, and it happens below conscious level. So it's always scanning, it's always looking. That's great. We need to get triggered. We need to be aware if there's danger, but we need to be able to bounce back faster so we have access to the full resources of our brain. Mindfulness also strengthens the brain's network, which is again all that we've been talking about, that prefrontal cortex, to regulate emotional reactivity. This is a really important piece as well. This resilience and having access to the part of our brain is what allows us to regulate our emotions, that we don't have to be the victim of them. We don't have to be at their beck and call. We can actually make conscious decisions of how do we want to respond to things. Yes, we'll get triggered, but can we bounce back faster? Okay. And it also strengthens mindfulness, the networks that underlie our ability to feel compassion towards ourselves and others. And that again is that nerve that connects into our heart. Okay, so that is how mindfulness helps us. We're going to look at a couple of mindfulness practices. These I would go through in much greater detail. I'm just going to focus on a couple of the key ones, and I'm going to start with gratitude. We touched on it already. Gratitude, again, is the superhighway into that part of our brain we want to get to. If you're looking for some pretty instant results and strengthening your resilience, and I can actually connect a lot of these practices to those muscles individually, but for our purposes, we're just going to talk about resilience, period, on the whole. But gratitude is, again, strengthen that pathway into the part of our brain where all those great muscles are there that we can access. Gratitude is also the easiest way of calming the amygdala. Okay, again, think of the teeter-totter. It's impossible for both of them to be turned on at the same time. So if you have been emotionally hijacked, if you have been triggered, if you can come up with some gratitude, real gratitude, it has to be emotive, it has to be heartfelt to work, then the amygdala gets turned down and you get back into the part of the brain you need to. Okay, so gratitude journal, someone mentioned that on the chat, is a great way of starting to exercise that particular, all of our muscles really. It does impact a lot. So the positivity would be very much impacted. Meditation, someone mentioned meditation as well. Meditation is in the moment, okay? So you are focusing on your breathing. This doesn't have to be on your cushion lotus pose. It can actually, you can walk. If you are out walking the dog, do nothing but walk the dog. Listen to the birds, feel the wind, smell whatever the smells are, what's going on right in that moment as you walk, not being caught up in your head. Eating, oh boy, that's a lost art, isn't it? We all eat in front of our computers or televisions, and it's just something that we do in order to get over with. Can we just truly just eat, just be with the food and the sensations involved in that? And then the next one that I do want to focus on is compassion. And again, compassion is a little bit like gratitude. If we can exercise it, we can dial it up, then we are creating that neural pathway. And there's lots of reasons to call that up right now. I think of all of our folks in Nova Scotia. That's certainly been a part of my daily practice these days, is including the compassion, sending it their way. And that too will help us. Self-compassion is a great way of strengthening our confidence, that confidence muscle. And again, we can draw connections to all of the muscles, but for our purposes, these are a couple of practices that we can do immediately and get some immediate results. So my challenge, oh, sorry.
I'm just playing my role here. You have 5 minutes. And just also wanted to remind everyone, either just put anything in the chat. There was a share there from Gord on a great booklet on the neuroscience of touch. So I want to bring attention to that and just give you a time check.
Thank you, Charmaine, very much. Appreciate that. Challenge to everyone is to to walk away with something today. It's been short and sweet, but I'm hoping that you've got something that you can take away with you. So I would challenge you to identify, let's go 1 to 2 commitments, and by that I mean something that you are prepared to try on a daily basis for the next 30 days. Let's make it easy. Keep it as something that you can add to your existing routine already. So when we talked about when you're walking your dog, can you do it mindfully? Don't do it for the whole time, but start off baby steps again. Let's go with that incremental. Can you spend the first 2 minutes? Can you spend the first 30 seconds in just mindfully doing nothing but walking the dog, being aware of the sounds, the smells, the sensations that are going on. When you're brushing your teeth, can you put a positivity affirmation on the bathroom mirror? Is that something that it can become your mantra as you're brushing your teeth? Simple, small, incremental, whatever it is, to help you exercise whichever muscle you think would be the best in order to deal with the pandemic and what the other things that are going on in your life as a result. You can enlist the help of a buddy. That makes it even better. I'm just going to stop sharing and I'm going to come back to the wider audience. We have a couple of minutes if there's any questions, insights. Again, I've got some stuff, but I know everybody out there has got lots of information, lots of things that would add to the conversation. So I'd love to hear from anyone, or if there's any questions, and otherwise I'll hand it back over to George. Okay, I think it's yours, George.
Hi, everyone. I'll leave the space open another few seconds or so in case there's an idea that's churning there that someone wishes to express. Okay, Terri, thank you so much. One of the things that is really standing out to us with the broad video series that VIEA is offering these days, and well as this one specifically as a gift and resource to our VIEA members, is the vast extent of expertise and subject experts in various fields right here on Vancouver Island. And we're delighted to have you made this presentation today. Invite everyone to remember that Maigus Consulting is a company that's right here on Vancouver Island, and obviously Terri is a tremendous resource for organizational development and health. So thank you very much, Terri. As all of you know, the Vancouver Island Economic Alliance, a couple of our key objectives is uniting and connecting decision makers and informing people and adding to the conversation on economic vitality. And I think we can add resiliency to that sentence now as well, Terri. Thank you so much again. I'll remind you that our video conference series continues next week. Tuesday at 11:30, we will be learning about how to use storytelling in social media and email to connect with customers with Cynthia Lockery of Lockery Communications. And I'll say also that you spurred, Terri, this morning one of my favorite quotes, which is a Chinese proverb, and that is that if you don't change direction, you will end up where you are headed. And that can be read positively and negatively. If you like where you're headed, then keep on going. And if you don't, maybe it's time to strengthen those new pathways in your neurocircuitry to develop new end results. So thank you, everybody. Stay well, keep good company during this pandemic and beyond. Bye for now.